Special thanks to Gaza1121 for the story. Please check him out in the description below. Now on to the story.
Name?
Gradok.
Your full name, please.
The receptionist clarified. Gradok Crushrock.
Crushrock. Ah, yes, here we are. Species: Musculose, preferred specialty, security and enforcement, allotted room 334. Welcome to the Galactic Defense Corps Academy.
Thanks. Where do I find room 334? Is there a map?
Yes, my apologies.
Replied the receptionist.
It's here in the rear of your welcome pack. Your main orientation will take place tomorrow. Your time slot is in the pack I just gave you, and the location will be in front of this building we are in now.
So what should I do today? Gradok asked, though the answer seemed obvious.
For today, I would recommend you rest and read over your welcome pack. I understand the travel from your world is a long one. Out of curiosity, did you stay awake for the trip?
No, I wasn't going to lounge about for 5 weeks waiting to arrive. I went into stasis practically the moment I stepped onto the ship.
From one rest straight into another, then?
There's nothing wrong with a lie, is there? Gradok asked jovially, smiling in spite of himself. Damn these Yellrambobs. They always seemed so nice. You could never dislike their kind. Not for very long, anyway. When they joined the Galactic Federation, they cornered the market in the service industry almost overnight. Almost every waitress, waiter, receptionist, and bartender was a Yellrambob. Yes, they charged above the average for their work, but for staff that had an almost infallible instinct to cheer up the customers, it was worth it. The receptionist smiled.
Of course not.
Then, as if a thought had just occurred to her, she asked,
If you have gone from sleep to sleep, you probably haven't heard about the humans?
The what?
A new race that joined the Federation.
A new race?
Yes, they may cause problems for your people at the start. Maybe we can get them some hats.
She said with a giggle. Hats? Asked Gradok, perplexed. Abruptly, the office phone began to chime.
Sorry, but I have to take this. There is a pamphlet on humans in your welcome pack. Good luck in your studies, and again, welcome to GDC Academy.
Raising the handset to her ear, she turned from Gradok, saying,
GDC Academy, how can I help?
Turning with the welcome pack in one hand and his bag in the other, Gradok consulted the map as he left the main building. The building his room was in wasn't particularly far, but neither was it close. He briefly considered reading about these humans as he walked, then stuffed the folder in his bag and slung it over his shoulder. The humans weren't going anywhere. He can read about them later. Making his way towards the building, he thought about the way the receptionist had spoken about him. Species Musculose, preferred specialty, security and enforcement. Of course, his preferred specialty was security and enforcement. Honestly, what else would one of his kind do to start? Musculoses had been the strength of the GDC for decades. There were scant few of his people that hadn't gone into professions where their kind's strengths were not employed. What would you expect from the only Death World race in the entire Federation? Reaching his room just as the class buzzer sounded, Gradok was dismayed to see 2 beds in his room. Sharing? They had him sharing? He supposed it was a fool's hope that he was randomly assigned one of the few solo rooms that were kept in case a species had issues that made it difficult to share rooms with other races. As he began to arrange the few personal items and clothing he had brought from home, his door opened behind him. Before he even had a chance to turn, a panicked voice spoke quickly.
A human? My roommate is a human? I thought your kind preferred to bunk with each other. Not that I'm saying you're unwelcome, but...
Gradok finally spun around enough to see the speaker, a Guptachar. Of all the species he could live with, it had to be a Guptachar. Gradok wondered how long it would take for him to complain about his smell. It's not his fault, Gradok supposed. His species had the best senses in the Federation. With a nose like that, it would be easy to sniff Gradok's sweaty clothes. If his people were the strong arm of the GDK, then the Guptachar were undoubtedly the furry wet nose. Their race's superior senses made them obvious choices for scouts and detectives. As he saw Gradok's face, the being suddenly seemed relieved. That alone gave Gradok pause. The other races had an almost universal apprehension of his kind. People seemed to always assume he might attack just because he came from a death world.
Oh, you're a musculos. I'm sorry, I thought you were human.
What? The new species? Why the fuck would you think I was human? My kind has been part of the Federation for over 50 years.
You mean you don't know? Where have you been the last 6 months? Sleeping under a rock?
Yes, actually I have, Graddock retorted, perhaps a little louder than he meant to. Do you have a problem with that?
No, not at all,
said the Gupta chair, the shaking of his head making his long ears flop about. Sudden realization washed over his face, and he smacked his snout with a paw, the equivalent of a facepalm for his kind.
I'm so sorry, you just had your hibernation cycle, didn't you? Of course you wouldn't know.
Walking over to his side of the room, he grabbed a piece of paper off his desk and held it out to Graddock. Taking it, he figured it was the pamphlet on humans the receptionist had mentioned. Turning it over, he had his first view of the human species and said, the first thing that came to him. What in the fuck is that?
Yeah, pretty much every race in the Federation had a similar reaction.
The Guptachar nodded. Looking at the bullet points alongside the image, the first line read, despite appearances, they are in no way related to the musculos race. Graddock read that line multiple times, as if expecting the words and image to suddenly change, but no. The image, save the face, was almost identical to himself. A little larger, a touch stockier, but still well within error. The smiling face was the only real difference. Where his kind had 4 eyes, these humans only had 2, though the expanse of skin above the main eyes was still present. He couldn't tell in the still image, but he thought his kind's teeth were longer, more geared towards carnivores. Were these beings herbivores? Omnivores? He went back to the information points. Significantly stronger than average, possessed of a constitution expected of a death. These beings are death-worlders.
Oh yeah, big time. I've seen some of the images of their homeworld and it's the stuff of nightmares. How can any sentient species evolve on death worlds?
Said Graddock sarcastically, raising his hand.
Oh, sorry.
He replied weakly. What about strength? This says significant.
Put it this way,
He replied.
they had to get their own exercise room.
What?
Yep, humans only. They are death worlders after all.
I'm a death worlder, barked Graddock. That tickled him at least. Barking at a Guptachar. Well, yes, agreed the Guptachar with a nod.
But there are death worlders and then there are death worlders.
What's that supposed to mean? As his new roommate opened their muzzle to reply, the class buzzer sounded, causing him to yip in alarm. Fuck, I'm gonna be late for class. We can continue this later. Grabbing a few books, he whipped back around, heading for the door.
I'm T anyway. Nice to meet you.
Graddock, said Graddock. Just before the door shut fully, T poked his elongated face back in.
One last thing. I know how much your kind like to exercise. I would take it as a great favor if you would shower and wash your gym clothes before coming back to the room.
Yeah, sure, Graddock replied, struggling to keep a straight face. Less than 10 minutes, he thought. Once again alone in his shared room, he looked at the time. 1 p.m. Looking at the fairly thick welcome booklet, he said, nope, flipped it over to see the campus map and reached for his gym bag. 5 minutes later, he was walking towards the exercise rooms. As he approached, he saw there were indeed 2 distinctly separate rooms. One was significantly larger than the other, owing to the vast array of exercise equipment suitable for over 20 different species. Separated by a glass wall, the other, smaller, room was clearly designed for bipeds. Everything was much narrower, and there was less equipment, because only one species was supposed to use it. Finally, seeing the humans running on treadmills, he understood the receptionist's giggle. Looking at them facing the wall, he would have mistaken them for his own kind himself, if he didn't know for a fact that he was currently the only student of his species on this planet. He had taken the first transport available the moment he had awoken from hibernation. Hats, indeed. Looking at the humans, he noted that only 3 were in the room, and none were using the weights. In fact, the weights looked completely unused. At least today. All 3 were facing the wall, running on treadmills. Looking closely at them, With his long-range eyes, he could clearly see the sweat running down their arms, making small puddles on the sides of the treads. Not as strong as he thought then, they were barely jogging and were drenched in sweat. Making a snap decision, he changed his direction. He would walk into the human-only gym and show them and the other species that he was just as strong as these new Death Worlders. He was of the Musculos. His people had been the strong arms of the GDC for over 50 years. He was of the Musculos. His people were the strongest beings in the entire Federation. He was Gradok Crushrock, and he was falling. The moment he crossed the threshold of the room, a force pushed on every cell in his body. It pushed him to his knees instantly, and moments later, to his stomach. The best he could do on his journey downwards was turn his head slightly in an effort to save his face. He was trapped, pinned to the ground, and as if to torment him further, one of the humans began to laugh.
Well, that's a beer you owe me, Jenkins.
Goddamn new cadets. Why don't you ever read the damn gym schedule? Thursdays are cardio, with extra gravity for resistance.
Oh fuck, thought Gradok. The insane things have increased the gravity to make running harder. Suddenly he realized how much trouble he was in. They thought he was human.
Will you just get up, buddy? The aliens are watching, and you're making us look bad. It's only 2.5 gram. You hit 3 gram, leaving Earth.
This is really bad, thought Gradok as his vision began to darken. They don't understand I'm in danger because I look like them. They think I can just get up. I need to ask for help. He couldn't talk anymore. He couldn't get enough air. So, he did the only thing he could. He grunted.
Hey, you okay?
The first voice said, the first bits of concern creeping into his voice. Gradok heard him move off the treadmill and approach. Yes, willed Gradok. Yes, look at me. I'm not human. As true darkness crept over his eyes, he saw a two-eyed face swam into his vision. Saw panic and understanding blossom in his eyes.
Fuck! Non-human! A non-human!
As he finally slipped into unconsciousness, Gradok had an odd floating sensation. It could have been seconds, minutes, or hours. He had no way of knowing, when a horrible cloying smell dragged him, kicking and screaming into consciousness. Knocking away something under his nose, he suddenly realized he really was floating.
Hey, are you okay? Can you tell me your name?
My name is Gradok Crushrock.
Seriously? Dude, that name is fucking metal.
What?
Never mind, how do you feel?
Shaken, but okay.
Good. Next question, what the fuck made you walk in here on cardio day?
I didn't know, I'm new.
Okay, well, now you know. Your people call us Death Worlders for a reason.
I'm a Death Worlder as well.
Oh yeah, I heard there was a second Death World race.
Hey, said Gradok weakly.
What class of death world?
Asked one of the humans. Gradok recognized the voice from earlier. This was Jenkins. Gradok suddenly had a sinking feeling in his stomach.
5.
Ah!
Said Jenkins, nodding.
Earth is class 18.
18? Echoed Gradok.
18? Of a possible 20?
The Musculos, the strongest beings in all the Federation for over 50 years, had competition. If you enjoyed this story and wants to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that comments heart, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.